The Legend of Zelda, one of Nintendo's oldest franchises, and to this day, one of their tentpoles. The only franchise more immediately associated with Nintendo is Mario, and together the two made Nintendo the titan that they are today. It's easily one of my favorite game franchises. When you think about your favorite Zelda game, what comes to mind? For me, it's A Link to the Past, but if you've been following me for long enough, you probably already know that. Lately, most people will probably say Breath of the Wild, which I grant is definitely amazing, and it's a very close call, but I think Link to the Past edges it out for me, based mostly on replayability. Or maybe it's Link Between Worlds, a direct sequel to Link to the Past, which takes Link to the land of Lorule, which is a stupid pun I can't help but love. I can't really say because I haven't played it. Or maybe your favorite game is Majora's Mask. Well, you're wrong, that game stinks. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that Zelda has had some dizzying heights, but any franchise that's been around for 3 decades is going to have some low points as well.
I just wonder what Ganon's up to.
You know as well as I do that those aren't canon and don't fucking count. Maybe you don't like Skyward Sword because of the naggy AI, the motion controls that don't work half the time, the map that's way too small for such an epic story, and the fact that you have to revisit the same areas over and over. Or maybe it's Twilight Princess, which took the absolute wrong lessons from the criticisms of Wind Waker to give a grim, dark, grimy world full of angst and brown and ugh. While we're talking about Wind Waker, the sailing was dumb. Everything else about that game rules, though. Or perhaps you're not a fan of Phantom Hourglass, which has one of the worst mechanics in the series of a recurring dungeon, the Temple of the Ocean King. Just the name sends shivers down my spine. These games are definitely flawed, but as far as I'm concerned, they're all still pretty fun. Even a bad Zelda game is still pretty good. I'll gladly play any of the games I previously mentioned than just about any other game on their respective consoles. Well, maybe not Twilight Princess. However, the one game that I see constantly brought up as the whipping boy of the series is Zelda II, with its confusing interface, cryptic dungeon exploration, and overall massive departure from the series as we know it. If you want to know my opinion, I think it might be the best game on the NES. I'm not being hyperbolic. I genuinely think Zelda II is one of the best games on the NES. The unfortunate truth is that its legacy has been tarnished over the ensuing years since its release. A lot of this is probably to do with the newer, more exciting games coming out. However, when Zelda II was first released, critics praised it, citing its unique gameplay and natural evolution of the series from a cut-and-dry action game to a full-blown action RPG. One of the biggest criticisms I see leveled against Zelda II is its brutal difficulty. While I don't disagree, it's important to remember what year this game came out. This is the NES we're talking about. Games were still $60, if not more, but they were way more limited in what they could do. Look at a game like Mega Man. An accomplished player can finish that in under an hour, but that comes after years of practice. The game is intentionally designed to be difficult, but not so difficult that it makes the player completely give up and move on to something else. Games in the 80s had to toe the line between being difficult but still gratifying to finish. A lot of them failed, but a lot of them are regarded as all-time classics. Zelda 2 did what it could with the technology they had at hand. They had to make the game hard, because if it was too easy for kids, and their parents who were actually spending the money, would feel ripped off. Another big gripe that I hear about this game frequently is that it's convoluted and too confusing to be fun. Well, you are dead wrong. Let's compare Zelda 2 to its predecessor. In The Legend of Zelda, the game opens and you are presented with a choice. Go left, go right, go up, or go into that tantalizing cave. Obviously, if you've played the game, you're going to go in the cave, but the majority of players are going to go in it as well. Who could resist the lure of the mystery cave? Upon entering the cave, you are given a sword and the missive, "It's dangerous to go alone. Take this." And that's it. That is the only direction the game gives you in terms of the main plot. The rest is up to you to figure out. Sure, there's a couple of side quests that give some level of direction, but any direction you get from the main game is cryptic at best. Compare this to Zelda 2. The game starts, and you are in the palace with an unconscious Zelda. The first thing you'll notice is how different this game is from the first one. Rather than being top-down, this is a side-scroller. Now you are presented with 2 decisions: go left or go right. Ultimately, both will lead you to the same place, out of the palace and onto the main road. As you explore your new surroundings, you'll see several more choices unfold in front of you, but most of them are inaccessible or otherwise too treacherous to traverse. Eventually, you'll find yourself in the first town. Yes, Zelda has towns now, like a traditional RPG, a change that has been carried over into every single game since. Exploring the town, you'll find that you can communicate with the people, and they tell you exactly where you need to go, as well as some other helpful hints, such as only the hammer can destroy a roadblock, find a heart in southern Parappa, each town has a wise man, do not go south without a candle. Eventually you learn that you need to go to Parappa Palace, get the candle, and then go west. This theme carries out through the rest of the game, where NPCs give you clues as to where to go next without outright hitting you over the head with the information. And for the most part, they are helpful. Now this is not to say Legend of Zelda is a bad game, but to call Zelda II confusing when faced with a decidedly more cryptic prior game is frankly short-sighted. Let's backtrack a little bit and talk about the opening of the game again. Nintendo is well known for innovation. They have a long history of taking your expectations and flipping them on their heads. First thing you see is the side-scrolling area, completely different from everything the player saw in the first game. It's only once you go outside of the palace that things start to look a little bit more familiar, but then you're attacked by a roving pack of monsters. This is where you are likely to get your first true taste of the meat of this game. You can still slash your sword, but now you can jump. This must have been mind-blowing the first time you played it, because as far as you were aware, Link was grounded. Link has largely been regarded as keeping his feet on the ground, but now there are just as many games where you have a jump function of some sort as not. This is just one of the many innovations that this game offers. As I touched on before, this is the first game in the series to introduce towns and NPCs, but it's also the first game to introduce magic spells and a magic meter, which are still seen in Zelda games to this day. With all of this, and the addition of an experience track and levels, this is the only game in the series that more closely resembles an RPG than an action game. These are all great changes to the game that kept it fresh and vibrant. If Nintendo had just churned out another game nearly identical to the first, I doubt The Legend of Zelda would enjoy the same legacy as it does today. However, as we saw with the Wii U video, not all innovation is a good thing. One of the few criticisms of this game that I can get on board with are the lives. On the surface, they're really not a horrible idea, but lives are definitely more appropriate in a game like Super Mario Bros. Like in Mario, losing a life in this game sends you back to the beginning of the current stage. And just like in Mario, getting a game over in this game results in the player being sent back to the beginning of the current world. Except in this case, there's only one world and it's at the beginning of the game, and that is dumb. You still keep all your levels and equipment, but if you're any farther in the game than the first 3 dungeons, it's a colossal pain to trek all the way back to the dungeon you were in, traversing dangerous terrain, perilous traps, and the ever-present threat of a monster ambush, all putting you at risk of losing more lives before you even get back to where you were. Frankly, it sucks. The only exception to this is, for some bizarre reason, getting a game over in the final dungeon does not send you back to the beginning of the game. Rather, it sends you back to the beginning of the dungeon. Why this wasn't the case for every stage is still baffling scholars to this day, but fortunately the big brains at Nintendo thought better of it and fixed a glaring oversight in future releases. The fact is, despite its reputation as one of the worst games in the series, this game has left just as much an impact as its predecessor. While The Legend of Zelda laid the framework for Zelda games as we know them today, Zelda II saw the introduction of many elements that are mainstays in the series to this day, from living, breathing towns, to magic spells, to even the introduction of Dark Link. The Legend of Zelda has the player exploring caves and collecting the Triforce to defeat Ganon, a theme directly tied to the ongoing lore and backstory of nearly every game in the series. But certain elements weren't introduced until the second game. Where the first game was just about a boy and his sword, the world felt very much like it was built specifically with Link in mind. The world in Zelda II, however, feels like it actually has life. There are people in the world who exist in spite of Link, not specifically to serve him, and the world has depth. Hyrule is at peace since the fall of Ganon, and people are going about their lives blissfully unaware of the impending doom on the horizon. It's an exciting concept that didn't get fully realized until Majora's Mask. And while I have my beefs with that game, it still did something special by giving you a world to run around in, and the people continue to exist regardless of what you do or say. And then it all doesn't matter because the world gets reset after 3 days anyway, but it was still such a cool concept, and you can see the seeds of it in Zelda II. Zelda II truly was a treasure among its peers, and if you have ill will toward this game, I highly recommend giving it a second look. Well, that is all the time that we have for this video, guys. Once again, I want to thank you for taking the time to watch it, and thank you for having patience with me while I worked on this video. It was definitely a labor of love. If you have not already, please give us a like if you enjoyed the video, and if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. There's going to be more content like this eventually, someday, probably. I don't know. These take me a little bit longer than the traditional Let's Plays. I'm sure you guys understand. And if you've got any thoughts about the video, if you've got any thoughts about Zelda 2, why don't you go ahead and leave some comments down below. What is your favorite Zelda game, and what is your least favorite Zelda game? Let's keep the conversation going, and I look forward to hearing from you guys. And of course, I look forward to seeing you in the next video, and I will see you guys next time. Until then, keep playing.